What is up, gamers? Staxwell is back at it again today with a Prism Mastery Guide. I was able to take Prism to a day 2 finish at US Nationals. I actually wound up drowning out in draft, unfortunately. I was very happy with my CC deck though. I've even made a lot of improvements to the deck since Nationals. I learned a lot of things at Nationals. I've been putting a ton of work into this hero, and I kind of just want to share everything I know with you guys. This is going to be more of a how to play Prism, all of the cute and cool interactions we have with every single card, and less of a deck tech. I'll be teaching you guys how to build Prism, what you should cut, how you should change the deck for each coming meta. I'd rather teach you guys how to play Prism and how to fish, rather than just have you guys copy a deck list and not even know what's going on with it. So yeah, think of this more as a Prism guide and less of a Prism deck tech. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump straight into it here. I think it's fitting that we start with talking about the two different modes that Prism can play on, the two different main game plans that you have as a Prism player. You're winning every game using one of these two modes, right? So the first one is Herald Beatdown. In the Herald Beatdown plan, you're siding in your Imperium Rapture and your big red Herald cards to throw as much damage as you possibly can at your opponent. The idea is to throw a Herald, have it hit, get a Figment, flip the Figment for free, attack with the Angel, and then attack with another Herald. If you do the math on that, the Heralds are 6 attack on average, the Angel is 4 attack, and then the Ward is 4. So you're getting 20 points of value every turn cycle, which obviously gets pretty insane, pretty out of hand very quickly. Most decks can't keep up with that. The obvious downside to this Herald plan is that all of the Heralds have the Phantasm keyword. So against decks that have a lot of 6 or more power attacks in their deck, so think like Brute or Guardian, it's going to be very hard to execute that Herald Beatdown strategy. The other main game plan, the other main style of play that we have is the combo-oriented Vestige of Soul game plan. There's a couple different things you could do with Vestige of Soul. The main overarching theme, though, is that we are trying to play as much Spectra Auras as we possibly can on our opponents. The main plan with this is to have a big Halo of Illumination turn and spit out hopefully 2 to 4 Spectra Auras that our opponent just can't clear. And then the turn-to-turn cycle, we're trying to play 2 Spectra Auras. Hopefully we could play a blue one and then flash in a yellow one. Our opponent could, of course, only clear 1 Spectra per turn. So ideally, we're building up more and more Spectras as the game goes on. And at some point, we have a critical mass that could just snowball our opponents. The other thing we could do with Vestige of Soul is set up an Arclight Sentinel loop. We do this by playing Arclight Sentinel, having our opponent clear it, then the next turn attacking with Figment of Rebirth using the Angel effect to put Arclight Sentinel on top of our deck, then following that up with an attack from Soraya to allow us to draw that same Arclight Sentinel, and then playing it again, and then our opponent clears it. Next turn we do the same thing, just kind of putting them in this infinite loop of always being under an Arclight Sentinel. And this actually sounds a lot harder than it is to pull off. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, but against the decks that it's good against them because they can't pressure you, they can't put that much damage your way, so you have a lot of time to set it up. Those are like the overarching game plans that Prism offers. Let me tell you about some of the key cards in the Prism deck that we're looking to resolve, that we're looking to play around, and this will kind of help you navigate your turn-to-turn a little bit better as well. Figment of Erudition is like think Miraging Metamorph. This is like the Miraging Metamorph of this deck. This is like every single game you should be playing towards your Figment of Erudition flip and your Figment of Erudition attack to draw you 2 cards. Don't ever flip an attack with Erudition unless you're drawing 2 cards. And if you can help it, you would like to protect your Figment of Erudition. A good player won't let you keep it because they're going to attack it directly. It's not just Ward 4, it also has 4 health, so they'll just attack your Soraya and kill it. So don't think you could just block for Soraya, because most of the time that's not going to work. Maybe against some inexperienced players it'll work, but for the most part the only real way to protect it is Arclight Sentinel. So in the slower matchups, particularly the Vestige matchups, maybe you're not trying to ALS loop them, you're just trying to spit out a bunch of Spectras, it's worth arsenaling an ALS or keeping your Figment of Erudition face down until you find the ALS, right? So you kind of want to try and find these 2 cards together to be able to get 2 Figment of Erudition triggers. Drawing 4 cards off this card is kind of insane. I think you'll run away with the game if you do that. And then in the Herald aggro game plan, Figment of Erudition is still like a key piece to it, right? So typically you're flipping every Figment as you get it with Imperium Rapture, which leaves you with no soul, right? Because you're not going to have any extra soul because you're banishing them just as quick as they go in there. At some point, you're going to Halo of Illumination to get Figment of Erudition after you've already hit with a Herald. So if you hit, they let it goes to soul. Cool. Now we're going to Halo to get the extra soul to be able to flip and attack and draw 2 with Figment of Erudition. It's very important you get this off every game. I can't, I know I've said it, but I can't stress it enough. That's the best Figment in the game. It's got the best ETB effect. They all have an effect when they come in the arena. Erudition has the best one. They all have an effect when they attack. Erudition has the best one. The best Herald in our deck is also Herald of Erudition. We're playing a couple cards just to enable this. Goliath Gauntlet for 1. Turning this into a 7 attack breakpoint is very crucial because they can't just block it with a card in hand and a piece of 2 block armor. They need 2 pieces of 2 block armor and a card in hand to cover it up when we Goliath Gauntlet it. We're also playing Angelic Wrath to try and secure the Erudition. If you have the space, if you can help it, personal either the Erudition or the Angelic Wrath and wait for the other, and it could be an absolute blowout. It's also worth noting that we are going to try and combo our Figment of War Courage token with Herald of Erudition. Even giving it that +1 attack makes it so they have to use a card in hand and 2 pieces of equipment to cover up Herald of Erudition. Drawing cards off either Erudition or Soraya is obviously insane. Drawing cards in any TCG is very good. Drawing cards in Flesh and Blood is very powerful. It's even better in Prism though, because you're not as limited by action points, because you have so many instant auras that allow you to land your cards and play all your cards out in hand, even without an action point. So yeah, drawing cards, very good in Prism. The last key card of the deck is Halo of Illumination. This is one of the most interesting and fun cards in all of Flesh and Blood to me. I think this card alone gravitates me towards Prism, towards this hero. The sheer number of options you have with Halo. You could bring out any one of your 6 Figments. You could use it just to fix your hand. You could use it for the Spell Void. The Figments offer so many options as well, right? You can do it to stack a Herald or to ping something for 1. Or deny a Phantasm Popper. Just use it as a this round's on me. There's so many things you can do with Halo of Illumination. It's hard to have a bad Halo, but you really are trying to find the absolute maximum value you can out of this card. When and where you pop Halo kind of separates the good Prism players from the mediocre ones. Some of the most common spots we're using Halo of Illumination. When you're on your Herald beatdown plan, one of the most common things you could do with Halo of Illumination is to bring out Figment of Triumph to deny a Phantasm Popper, because in the matchups that you're playing Herald beatdown would be like a Ninja or an Azalea or something, right? And Ninja is playing like CNC and Azalea is playing like Battering Bolt and all of these 6 power poppers, right? So maybe you throw a Herald of Erudition at them and they block it with a CNC. Perfect. Pitch a card, Halo of Illumination, put a Herald in your soul, trigger Prism, Prism effect, bring out Figment of Triumph effect, turn the CNC into a 5 attack card, no longer triggering the Phantasm, which means Herald of Erudition hits, which means it goes to soul, which means you draw 2 cards and get another Prism trigger to get out your Figment of Erudition. Then you have 2 cards in soul, right? Because one was from the Halo and one was just now from the Erudition. So you'll flip it, attack, draw 2 more cards. Yeah, most of the time in the aggro plan, you're looking to do it to deny a Phantasm with Figment of Triumph. Sometimes that doesn't present itself. Sometimes the game kind of goes on a while and you're worried you're not going to be able to Halo. Don't wait too long, right? You can't. You kind of have to pop this card when you have a 4-card hand. It doesn't really work with a 2-card hand. So if you get close to the point where you need to start blocking, you need to start looking for a place to Halo. Even if you just have to Halo to be able to get an extra card in your soul so you can attack with Soraya and draw 2, it's worth doing it. That's like the normal ways you'll activate it in the aggro matchups or in the Rapture matchups, I guess I should say, because you're the aggro deck. I don't want to say aggro matchups and yeah, get that confused. When you're the aggro deck, that's how you're activating it. When you're the combo deck, when you're Vestige of Soul, you're using it as the combo enabler. You're using it to turn on your Vestige of Soul and to turn on your Tome of Divinity. A lot of the times I'll slap a Tome of Divinity in my arsenal, and I'll wait till I have a hand that looks very good with Halo, and then I'll pop Halo and just go off and try and activate as many Spectra cards as I can. Oftentimes that means slap a tome in Arsenal and wait till I find a second tome, or maybe it means when I'm like ready to go with my ALS loop, I have all the pieces in place. Maybe I have an ALS in Arsenal and I have the figments I need on board, and then I draw a Tome of Divinity. I'm like, okay, it's go time. But yeah, almost always when you're on Vestige of Soul, it is just used to facilitate a big combo pop-off turn where you can spit out as many Spectra auras as you possibly can. So those are like the main key cards. Those are like the play around cards that we have in our deck. Let's go over the individual card choices and kind of get a feel for how this deck works and what we're trying to accomplish on a turn-to-turn cycle. So we've talked about Halo. Luminaris, the Angel's Glow. This is the only weapon you could play. Prism was so terrible until this card came out. Use that as a sign to tell you that it's the only weapon worth playing. Phantasmal Footsteps. Most of the time we're just using this to pay 1 to get the additional action points. It is rare, but sometimes you are paying 1 to give it 1 defense. A quick example of that is you're doing a defensive Prism effect to awaken a Figment, right? You pitch a blue, awaken your Figment, and then you have the 1 extra resource to block with Footsteps. Or maybe you pitch a blue to Soul Shield, and then you have another resource to squeeze into Footsteps there as well. Arclight Sentinel, we've talked about this. You could Arclight Sentinel loop people. The combo is very strong. It's a little bit too in the weeds to get into the specifics on how to set it up and how to do it here. I will upload gameplay of me ALS looping some people. Once I explain it and once I show it a couple times, I have a lot of confidence. I'm going to make it look very easy, and it is easy. It looks easy because it is easy, and it sounds way more complicated than it is. I can't wait to upload that and show you guys how easy it is to pull it off. But yeah, in every matchup, ALS is insane. There's so many times where your opponent will take a Herald, goes to Soul, get a Figment, flip it, attack, they take that too. Maybe you even attack with another Figment, and they're like, my hand's nutty, I'm taking all the damage. And so they keep this 5-card hand, and then you just throw ALS down, and it's just like, I feel like they just lose on the spot. You guys just took, 15 damage for what? Just to get ALS. Yeah, the card is one of the most annoying, one of the best cards in all of Flesh and Blood. It also just carries against something like Azalea. Maybe they go like pump, 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 and then you just throw an ALS their way. So like they end with not even having an arsenal. And then yeah, we kind of talked about it. It protects Soraya as well. So even if you have to use 3 cards to play this, as long as you're protecting a Soraya with it, it's worth it because you're going to get 2 of those cards back. You're going to skip your opponent's turn. Yeah, one of the best cards in the deck for sure, without a doubt. Figment of Protection. This is the Spectral Shield Figment. Make a Spectral Shield on play and then make 2 on attack. Very good against something like Ninja, where they're going to be throwing like Kodachis or Blue 100 Winds or very small attacks at you. You don't want to be using your Ward 4 to soak up 1 small attack, right? So making a small pile of Spectral Shields could just help you cover a lot of breakpoints. Seems fine against Azalea too, being able to cover up some breakpoints, right? Being able to cover up a drill shot, or having the 2 Spectral Shields from the attack to cover up a breakpoint on Infecting Shot or something. All of this can go a long way. It's also worth noting that you can make a little pile of Spectral Shields off of the flip and the ETB effect, and then just kind of go above rate on your Merciful Retribution, shooting your opponent for 3. Also, this card's very good to bring off of Halo on your opposing K-Nose pop-off turn because it has the ETB Spectral Shield. When the K-Nose trying to combo you, it's just like 1 more ward on their combo turn. Figment of Ravages. This is just like reach for the most part. Most of the time, people don't expect Prism to have any reach. They're less experienced in the matchup. They're not quite playing around it. This even happened in Nationals. I had an opponent who took a Herald hit and went to 1, and then I just brought out Figment of Ravages and killed him while he had 4 cards in his hand. He just wasn't ready for it. He just wasn't experienced enough in the matchup to think about Herald or think about Figment of Ravages. But yeah, even if they are thinking about it, it's still just like a good race card, right? Because like against Zen, you're just racing, and this is just a couple more points of value added your way in that race. Figment of Rebirth. This card is very powerful. Before, the wisdom on Herald of Erudition was don't attack with it unless you are for certain it's going to hit. Instead, you should just pitch it and wait for it to come back, because when it comes back, they'll have less armor, they'll have less D-reacts, it'll be more guaranteed to hit. But these days, you kind of almost want it to miss, because then it will go to your graveyard, and then you could Figment of Rebirth it on top of your deck. And if you could Figment of Rebirth it on top of your deck, you could kind of be more intentional, more consciously setting up your Angelic Wrath, Herald of Erudition combos. Gives you a little bit more influence on setting that up, right? Also, obviously, it enables the ALS loop. It is the ALS loop, right? It's ALS and that's the loop. So the fact that it turns that on is enough. Putting Herald at the top of the deck is just pushes it over the top. Figment of Triumph, most of the time this is to turn off a Phantasm Popper, but the Angel side effect is not bad either, especially against a go wide deck like Zen or Katsu. This is just, hey, this round's on me, right? It's just, that's all it is. So yeah, activating it could get you a lot of value, 5-10 points of value, could become insane very quickly. Figment of War used to be like one of my least favorite figments. I used to hate this card. But the more you play with it, the more you realize how broken it is. Giving a Courage token to Herald of Erudition just makes it a breakpoint that just requires another piece of armor to block it out, becomes very good. And then the Angel side, you're only ever activating the effect when you're ALS looping, because you'll have those two Angels out pretty much forever for the rest of the game. So turning them to 5 attack, you just get a lot of value out of that, because you're going to attack them with those two Angels like 10 times. So if you give them even +1, yeah, it just gives you like 10 points of value right there. Courage token is also very good at turning these 6 power attacks into 7 power attacks on your yellow heralds, right? Your yellow Triumph, yellow Judgment, and yellow War Tunes. Please don't waste your Courage token on giving your blue heralds a 6 power breakpoint, because that's not going to do anything. They're still just going to block it with 2 cards, and you're going to kind of waste your Courage token. Genesis, obviously required for the ALS loop. You have to keep up your soul while you're doing the ALS loop, and Genesis is the obvious way to keep funding your soul every turn. But it's also just a must clear Spectra card. So if you're just on any kind of Spectra plan, they have to spend time, they have to spend damage, they have to spend a turn killing Genesis, or you're just going to run away with the game. There's a lot of times where your opponent just doesn't respect Genesis, and you make a little pile of Spectral Shield tokens, and then you're able to just kill them with Merciful. That's happened quite a few times for me as well. Most of the time in the Herald aggro game plan, you're either like playing this at the end of a big Soraya turn, or you're just pitching it. That's for the most part what you're doing on the aggro game plan. And then on the combo game plan, yeah, you could either use this to facilitate the loop, or it's just another must clear Spectra card. So it kind of fits both roles very well. Herald of Erudition we've talked a lot about. Herald of Judgment is just insane this format, especially if you're throwing it at Zen or Katsu or Vincent or Levia. It's very good against all of those heroes. And then if you're throwing it as the second Herald, it's even more powerful, because if you throw, say you throw like a War Tune at them and they're like, my hand's cracked, I'm not gonna block, cool, then you get an Angel, attack them with the Angel, I'm not blocking, my hand is insane. So they just took 10 damage, and then you throw a Herald of Judgment at them, they have to block this card. Zen cannot really do anything meaningful or cool under Herald of Judgment. So yeah, they just took 10 damage, and then they still have to block this card. Yeah, so if you have the chance, throw it as the second Herald if possible. Herald of Triumph, obviously very good. Attack action cards get -1 while defending this. Turns CNC, Weakest Link, Amnesia into not Phantasm Poppers anymore, which all of those cards are very popular in this format, so Herald of Triumph is going to be very popular in this format. Because of that, we're maxing out on Herald of Triumph. We're playing 9 of it. Merciful, probably my personal favorite aura. It's very sneaky, the things you could do with Merciful. If you attack with a Herald and then they blow it up with Phantasm, you could flash in Merciful, then the Herald dies, goes to your soul because of Merciful, which triggers Prism, and then also deals 1 arcane damage. I've talked a little bit about all of the cheeky Spectral Shield interactions you could get with Merciful to deal some sneaky damage to your opponents. You also deal a damage off all of the auras that die, right? So the Courage tokens, the Frailty tokens, all of those tokens that are dying are all triggering Merciful. Merciful also carries a lot of weight in the Enigma matchup. Your opponent doesn't want to clear it, because then they have to, and they can't just take a damage. Like other heroes could just be like, oh, I'll take 1, whatever. But Enigma might not be able to, because she might have a ward that she can't let die. So it carries even more weight in that matchup. And I don't know if I touched on this, but Figment of Ravages in the Enigma matchup is very good. You could halo out Figment of Ravages at any time and shoot them for 1. So they can't just like completely block and tap out and then Tunic to attack with their Miragi, because then you'll just halo into Ravages and blow up their Miragi. So it's very good. And then the flip and attack effect of it is very good as well, because if Enigma sides in AB, they just side in AB1. So you could leave this card face down until they have a Miragi, and then you could flip it up and attack, and they have to find another ward, or they have to pitch a chi to make a Spectral Shield, or they have to, do something crazy to protect that, and then they still have a 4 breakpoint coming at them. Soul Shield, very good because it goes to Soul, and going to Soul is important because it triggers Vestige of Soul, which allows you to play a 4-cost aura at the cost of just pitching a blue on your opponent's turn, which could be very critical, or even pitching 2 yellows to play an ALS, something like that. It going to Soul is very relevant. It costing 2 is very relevant. If you pitch a blue to play this while you're on Rapture, you'll still have 1 floating, and then you could pitch a blue to play your 4-cost auras anyway. Or if you're just pitching a blue to play Soul Shield, you could always squeeze in a Footsteps block with it as well. War Tune is very good because it has the 1 cost, which allows you to weave in Phantasmal Footsteps a lot easier. This deck's cost curve is kind of built on you having 2 cost attacks. So having the 1 cost attacks, very good to weave in not only the Footsteps, but if you draw them in multiples, it's kind of cool. You can like throw 2 War Tunes at your opponent with just a 3-card hand. Angelic Wrath, we talked about. It's fine to use on anything, but it's really good to use on Erudition. It being a blue is also very good because it helps you a lot with your Vestige of Soul game plan. You just need the resources. Herald of Protection and Herald of Ravages are just the next best blue heralds we could play. Unfortunately, Erudition and Judgment don't come in blue. If they did, we would be playing them, obviously. Since we can't, we're playing Protection and Ravages. They're both fine. They're fine cards. There's nothing wrong with them. Passing Mirage is a must-clear Spectra card for a lot of decks, which gives you a lot of space to set up bigger hands, set up bigger combos. Pierce Reality gets out of hand very quickly if your opponent doesn't clear it. And it turns a lot of things into scary breakpoints, right? It turns your blue heralds into 7 attack breakpoints. It turns your Erudition into a 7 attack breakpoint. Just overall carries a lot of weight. The card is very, very good. All right, so that's the 51 core, like main core cards of the deck. We're playing these 51 cards into almost every matchup. I guess against Kano, we would take out our Soul Shield. But for the most part, we're playing these 51 cards into every matchup. And then based on how we're playing, we're siding in 9 cards. If we're on our Imperium Rapture Herald aggro plan, we're just siding in the 9 Heralds. And we chose these Heralds because they're the best red Heralds we could play. War Tune and Triumph, we've already kind of went over why they're so good. But the next best red Herald is a little bit debatable. I went with Herald of Protection, and that's because the Spectral Shield could synergize with Merciful Retribution, whereas the next best Herald would be like Herald of Ravages, which is always 1 point of value, whereas Herald of Protection could possibly be 2 points of value, but at the very worst, it's 1 additional point of value on hit. On the Imperium Rapture plan, we're almost always playing Goliath Gauntlet. So yeah, there's like the Rapture package there, and then the Vestige combo package is 3 Ode to Wrath, 3 Parable, and 3 Tome. Ode and Parable are just there because they accrue value and they could snowball if left unchecked. And they're Spectra cards. We're only playing Vestige against these slower decks that have to clear our Spectras, that have a hard time clearing the Spectras, I guess I should say. So these, yeah, snowball, and they're hard to clear. Tome, very good combo card, particularly when comboed with Vestige of Soul, so that's a no-brainer to include those. And then most of the time with Vestige of Soul, we are playing our Stonewall Gauntlet. This is because it blocks 2 against almost every deck. Don't look at this card and think like, oh, it's only good against Ninja or Go Wide decks or whatever. Look at it and think it's Blade Break 2, because that's all it is most of the time, and that's fine. We need the extra life to be able to have more room and space to set up our Vestige combos. We're also playing Figment of Judgment. This one is very good in the Zen games where we can banish we can flip our opponent's banished combo pieces face down. So if they search a combo piece off Zen or off Bonds or something like that, we could flip it face down and deny them a lot of value. We're also playing Null Rune 2. We're on Gloves and Boots. This is against Kano. This is one of the very valuable lessons I learned at Nationals. I lost to my teammate Peter Bendunsik. Shout out to Pete. But yeah, in that matchup, I learned you need AB2. Don't think Kano's just free, because he could just blow you up out of nowhere. I think I played like one turn against Pete, and he just blew me up. If I had AB2, I would have lived. So it's just one extra side deck card. Why not just put in the one card and sure up that matchup? We're also playing Gambler's Gloves. We're bringing this in against every brute. I know some brutes are playing Hooves, or some of them are playing Beaten Trackers. I don't care. I'm always bringing in Gamblers. If they're on Hooves, even better for me. It's going to make my Herald of Erudition a little bit easier to hit. And Brute is just such a bad matchup for you because it's so good against both your plans, right? It's good against Phantasm, and it's good against Spectra thanks to their Scabskin Leathers. That is really hard to win that matchup in general. So what I try and do is I play the Vestige combo plan, and I try and spit out so much Spectra that they feel pressured to start rolling the boots. And then when they do, I try and Gambler's Gloves it to a 1, because that's how you win that matchup, is you make them roll 1s. There's a lot of turns where if they roll a 1 that turn, they just lose on the spot. So Gamblers helps make that happen. If I can turn my bad matchup into a game of dice, I very much am happy with that. So that is the main deck there. Like I said, I don't want you guys to just copy this and run with it. I kind of want to teach you guys how to play it, how to build it, and what to be thinking about while you're building it. So let's go over some of the cards that didn't quite make the list and why. Maybe it's just not the right meta for them. Maybe you guys do want to include it. Maybe you understand the downsides and thinks the benefits outweigh it. But I do kind of want to just go over these cards and tell you why I didn't play them. So let's start with Great Library of Solana. This card actually seems quite good in the Vestige of Soul game plan. I won't blame anyone for putting it in their deck. If I could play an 81st card, I would actually probably play it. I would cut probably Ode or Parable if I had to include it in this deck. Why I don't think it's better than Ode or Parable is because it's not always guaranteed value, right? Like Parable is guaranteed going to give your opponent's attacks -1 every turn, whereas Great Library, you have to draw 2 yellow cards, you have to pitch them, sometimes you want to attack with the yellow cards, or all your best Spectra cards are yellow, so like it doesn't always work the way you want it to work. It takes an action point to play it. It doesn't block. It's just not quite as consistent as I want it to be, and I'd rather play Ode or Parable because those are just guaranteed value. Herald of Ravages, like I said, you could play this over Protection, but Protection potentially is worth 9 because the Spectral Shield makes it 8, and then pinging off the Spectral Shield could, turn this to 9 points of value, whereas Herald of Ravages is just always 8 if it hits, right? It is worth noting that Herald of Ravages combos nicely with Ode to Wrath, but any matchup we're bringing in Herald of Ravages, we're not bringing in Ode to Wrath. But that is an interaction that's good to keep in mind for your blue Herald of Ravages, because that will be in your deck while you have Ode to Wrath in there. Herald of Tenacity, red. This is the one that's a 2 for 6 with Dominate. I don't play this card, and I don't like it because, well, ask yourself, what matchups are you playing your Herald Race into? You're playing it into Ninjas or Azalea, and are those decks trying to block you? No, they're not trying to block you, so why do you need Dominate? What good is Dominate doing you? It's actually just slowing you down because it only has 6 points of attack. It doesn't create a Spectral Shield. It doesn't deal more damage. So you're just going, like, not under rate on your attacks, but like you're bringing down your numbers just for Dominate, which might not even be relevant because they might not want to block it anyway. And I've noticed in the Herald Race plans, they don't want to block me, so Tenacity doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. The yellow Tenacity I like a bit more because it would be a main deck card, and I wouldn't just be playing it against like decks like Zen and Azalea. This would still be good in my like combo game plan, right? So it seems a little bit better in yellow, and Herald of Protection in yellow I also want to talk about as well, because either of them could be swapped in for Herald of Judgment. Maybe by the time you're watching this video, Zen isn't as popular as he is right now, and Herald of Judgment just isn't needed. If you're going to cut the Herald of Judgment, it would be for one of these 2 cards. I think the better consistent card is Herald of Protection. But Herald of Tenacity, yellow, I don't hate that card either. Figment of Tenacity, I did play this for Nats, and I kind of regret it. The idea is that you pop your Halo, get Figment of Tenacity, and then give your next attack Dominate, so then you attack them with like a a red Herald of Ravages, and it has Dominate, so it's gonna hit, so it goes to Soul, so you get your Figment of Erudition, and then you have 2 cards in your Soul, so you're able to flip it and attack. And it sounds better than it is because you're gonna get blown out by either an Arsenal Sink Below or a Phantasm Popper or something like that. It happened to me over the weekend, and it just doesn't quite work out the same way it does in your head. So yeah, I wound up cutting it. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but yeah, I wouldn't blame you entirely if you wanted to play it. Maybe Zen isn't popular, so you don't need Figment of Judgment anymore. Maybe you just want the extra Figment in your deck. It's not the worst card ever. Invoke Soraya, this card just doesn't quite make sense to me. I understand you can pop your Halo, get out Figment of Protection to make the Spectral Shield on command, so you kind of just wait for your Soraya to do that, and then you play Soraya and you're able to attack and gain the 4, like you have life gain off it, right? So if you attack, you gain 4. But is that worth your Halo? I don't think that's worth your Halo. I think I'd rather just Halo into drawing 2 or into denying a Phantasm. I don't think it's the worst card ever. But yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. What if your protection's gone? What if you drew your protection? There's just a lot of things that could go wrong with this game plan that I just don't think it's worth including. I don't think it's the worst card ever, but yeah, it's just not quite worth including to me. And it also transforms your Spectral Shield, so like you do lose 1 point of value because you lose your Spectral Shield to play this as well. Yeah, anyway, moving on. Light of Soul, this one is very similar to Great Library of Solana to me, except Light of Soul feels a little bit more high roll, because if you pitch it and you get a yellow Herald off the top of your deck, put that into Soul, trigger Prism, it seems like things could just snowball. Like you could just go crazy with Light of Soul, or it could do nothing. So if it's a yellow no block that does nothing because you revealed a blue or whatever, this card's just terrible. I like my deck and my card choices to be a little bit more consistent. If you have the card and you want to include it and you want to high roll people, I won't blame you at all. It sounds fun, but it's just not quite the way I like to play my decks. I like them to be, yeah, a little bit more consistent. Dream Weavers, this one doesn't quite make sense to me either, because like what deck would you want to secure the Phantasm against? Would it be against like what decks with a lot of Phantasm, I imagine? So what decks would that be? Brute and Guardian? Well, Brute and Guardian both have insane equipment suites. So if you Dream Weavers and then attack with Erudition, they're just going to give you a bunch of armor for it. And if you're not doing it with like it would be in there to secure the Erudition. That's the only reason you would play Dream Weavers, to secure the Erudition. What other uses would it have? I guess you could play it against Ninja or against Azalea just to make sure that they didn't draw the Phantasm Popper or whatever. I think it's fine. They might not even have a Phantasm Popper. I just don't think this card is worth it. I've never liked this card. But yeah, it's not. I wouldn't blame you too much if you played it, because when it works, right? When I get Phantasm popped, like when I pop Goliath Gauntlet and attack attack an Azalea with a 7 attack Erudition and it gets popped, it does feel bad. And what I normally do is I ideally like to keep up Halo of Illumination and have a 4-card hand and then attack with Herald of Erudition with the Goliath Gauntlet, so they at least can't pop me with a 6-power attack. But yeah, what if you even did this and got blown out by a Sink from Arsenal? It just doesn't sound that good to me. And then yeah, like Azalea is also playing Tar Pit Trap. What if they just Tar Pit Trap you? And then I just don't get it. Iris of Reality. I played this card at the Vegas Battle Hardened and I hated it. I don't think I won a single game on my Iris plan. Decks are just too fast these days. I even boarded it in against New and got totally cooked. They just raced me down. The only way Iris really makes sense is if we're in a format that simultaneously can't deal with Spectra and can't pressure you too much, like pressure too much damage to you. So you have time to set up the Spectras and then you have time to start attacking with them. So that would be like last format, right? Because last format, you know, we had like Kasai and Victor. That would be very powerful against like those kind of decks. But in this environment, it just doesn't make sense. I think it's a crutch. I think if I didn't know how to ALS loop people, I would probably lean a little bit more on Iris of Reality. But yeah, any deck that Iris is good against, ALS loop is probably better against. The only reason you would play this over that is if people started teching for ALS loop. So if you're watching this and everyone's playing Time Skippers now, then it could be worth looking at Iris of Reality, I suppose. Vambrance of Determination, obviously in here for Enigma. I just don't think it gives you enough percentage points into Enigma to justify a spot. Like if you look at gamblers, right? Turning their 6 into a 1, you know, the percentage of that happening is like what, 18% or 17%? That's not bad. 17% chance to just win the game on the spot. Do you think that this is increasing your win rate by 17%? I don't think it is. I don't think it's enough to flip that matchup. And I also don't think Enigma is even playing that much ward anymore, right? Like if you're touching their ward at all, it's probably good enough. So yeah, I just don't think this card is worth it. Maybe if they go back to their heavy ward builds and they have less blocking potential and stuff, maybe it could flip it, but as it stands, I don't see it. Wave of Reality, you could play this card over Stonewall Gauntlet, and I wouldn't blame you too much. I think Stonewall Gauntlet has a little bit of an edge because not only does it cover up breakpoints, there's so much ward prevention in the meta thanks to Enigma. There's things like Murkmire Grappler that could just deny all your Wave of Reality value, which would kind of suck. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. Consider this to be part 1 of the series. In part 2, we are going to go over every single matchup in the game. We're going to get in depth with literally every CC hero and how I would play against them and some of the cute hero specific interactions. And then we are also going to upload some gameplay video of both the ALS loop and the Herald aggro plan. I do want to focus a little bit more on the ALS loop since I think people probably struggle more with that one. The Herald aggro game plan is a little bit more straightforward. So by the time you're seeing this, if you're not a member, the matchup breakdown will already be live for members only, and then the play will be coming soon, probably this weekend or sometime next week, but I'm going to make both of those only available to members because I just don't think there's as much interest in them. If you're not a member, why are you not a member? It's only $3 a month. You get early access to the Market Watch content, and then you get the sideboard guides for these deck mastery guides. I'm going to start pumping a little bit more of these out if I can. This definitely isn't going to be the first one. I'm actually probably going to have some people come on the channel and help me with a couple of different heroes that I wouldn't consider myself to be a specialist in. So get ahead of it, get in on this early. It's only $3 a month. Thanks for everything, later gamers.